Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure Weekly Update show. My name is Marcos Nogueira, and with me I have my other partner of the Man in Black, Andrew Lowes. How are you, my friend?
I am amazing. It's been a very busy week. We're recording a little bit later on the weekend because we were out enjoying the beautiful sunshine and spending some time with our loved ones and our families. So
Abs-
it's been a wonderful weekend for me.
absolutely. And because yes, it's the summer, or we say that the very good weather of the spring arrive in our beautiful province of Alberta,
Hmm.
and we decided to enjoy a little bit more. Although we use wisely the time to just record this where is raining. So
Absolutely, yes. Today's been kind of the typical spring day with beautiful sunshine and thunderstorms sprinkled throughout.
exactly. So means that the clouds are full.
This is true.
What
There's a
a
lot going
worst
on.
joke to start this show.
It's one of my favorite things,
It's
though, I have
yes,
to admit.
yes. It's Azure everywhere. Even even
It is.
even on the even on Alberta. Oh, we come back again.
Oh, I guess we have a special guest today.
Yes,
That's good.
we have the special.
Casper is back.
Exactly. That's okay.
That's okay. So it was a very good week for updates, although I think everybody was maybe catching their breath a little bit after build.
Yes.
Lots of hard work. There was a very heavy week the week before with the build conference, and a lot of very huge updates, right?
Yes.
So this week was a bit more relaxed, and we did talk about the theme. And what did we land on for our theme this week?
It was a generic team, so it's like um, it's a little bit of everything. Although I have to say that from the all the updates that we had this week is probably one of the weeks that we had to cut, not to cut, that we are not mentioning um, less in this case updates because it were not made for the agenda, in this case for our area, so we can say that was an IT infrastructure week because we will go talk about Azure Site Recovery, Security Center, our new favorite project Azure Sentinel, talking about some good Azure and announcements that they are in GA, a very cool one. And it's a very short in terms of number, but very good in content. So it's a
It is.
quality week instead of a quantity week.
Very wise indeed. Yes, I would have to agree. There's some very good quality updates this
Yes,
week. I like that.
absolutely. So very good. It's going to be a very good discussion. But before going on that, what I would like to do is to thank you in this case, uh, to just click my button, my favorite button of don't forget to subscribe if you like the content, and if you want to hear more from us. Apparently, everyone is enjoying, and we want to thank you for that. In this case, I think Andrew is very humble like me to every
Mm.
week see the amount of feedback that we are receiving. It's really awesome to get that, and please keep it up. So don't forget to smash like Hulk that like button, or leave it comments. We have a few of you guys that they are seeing this podcast, which is awesome. Which is good because I have some colleagues of mine that they are seeing, and they are mentioning me. Say, what a great show! What a fun way to learn what is being on Azure for the last week, and for that
That's
we
amazing.
want to thank you as well. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, you. In this case that you are watching, don't forget to subscribe, put the bell or whatever it is there, and let's move on. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the feedback has been amazing, and it is very humbling indeed that once in a while we can speak with somebody, or we're working with somebody and they say, hey, we saw your podcast.
Yes.
And it's I always feel a bit nervous but also very excited, all kind of all at the same time,
Yeah.
right? And it's really special, I guess is maybe the right word.
Absolutely.
But we super appreciate it, we really do. And thank you so much for participating with us, because you make it fun for us too.
Absolutely. And you make the reason for this conversation happen every single week, right? So
Absolutely.
let's start our podcast. Let's roll into the video, or in this case into the intro, and then we can come back with the updates. Shall we? So, welcome back. And now let's start on our first update. On our first update, it's a kind of a mouthful, but Azure announced general availability of a scale out NVIDIA A100 GPU cluster, the fastest public cloud supercomputer. What a way to start our week. Besides that, your ad again shrink, but that's okay.
Oh, excellent. Oh my
That's
goodness.
okay.
Very close up. Ay, 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 as they say, right?
Exactly.
That's okay. So while you're doing that, yeah, so this was a really interesting kind of a tidbit that the blog slipped in there on us. And it's kind of interesting because we've seen a lot of NVIDIA GPU clustering happening in Azure. And we've started to see some hardware upgrades, which is almost hard to imagine. But there is some hardware shortages worldwide right now. And we're still kind of, even though I feel optimistic, we're entering what I'm crossing my fingers and knocking on wood a bit and hoping we're at the tail end of this whole pandemic challenge around manufacturing and lifestyle changes. But it has impacted deliveries. And yet Microsoft has been able somehow to have a procurement process that is robust enough to withstand this. So they've still been upgrading hardware, adding data centers, building out their existing data centers and adding new ones, and making like it just keeps going and going, right? So when I was looking at this NVIDIA GPU update for cloud GPU instances, I'm going to let you grab some of these numbers out of here, because I love the way that you emphasize things.
Yeah.
But I'm going to lead you right into it and say the benchmarking with the 164 ND A100 V4 virtual machines on a pre-release public supercomputing cluster yielded a high-performance LINPACK, which is LINPACK is the testing standard, right? Result of what did we hit here?
16.59 petaflops. So it's not
Petaflops.
petaflops. Flops. It's not.
Not flip-flops, but
Yeah,
petaflops.
exactly. Petaflops, it's for you that you are listening, it's I don't know how to describe. It's what, so we have gigabytes, we have terabytes, we have, from terabytes we have
To petabytes.
petabytes. So this is the scale above the terabytes. So just to give you an idea, and this is 16.59 petaflops. flops, right? And it's
That's right.
huge.
Yeah.
It's
To
huge.
go backwards to teraflops is times 1024.
Exactly.
Still stands the same for processor function.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's huge. Super, super crazy amount of throughput for processing.
Yes, it is. It is unbelievable big in this case. And I'm just trying to do some numbers here because, for example, I have a GPU that is nothing to do with this. That is this is the benchmark, right? I'm just trying to do something here, and on the just to give you an idea, the benchmark of a NVIDIA RTX 390, that is a 24 gigabyte, in this case, achieve something close to where I can see this, something close to uh, on the flops.
So, while you're coming up with that number, I want to talk a little bit about VM to VM connectivity.
Yes.
So in these tests using the A100s, every 8 GPU virtual machine features a full complement of third generation NVIDIA NVLink, enabling GPU to GPU connectivity within the VM that exceeds 600 gigabytes per second of data throughput. So these are really being used to process a huge amount of data. So quite often these are used for machine learning and AI processing. And there's a lot of flexibility within the standards that they've kind of set with this. And as if you scroll down even a little bit in the article, there's a kind of, oh, it's a very small, it's a one-liner, but there is a chart with the VM size, and you get 96 physical CPU cores. That's a pretty beefy server. 900 gigs of RAM, the 8 NVIDIA A100 GPUs.
Mhm.
You get the temporary, like the normal temporary space, and then you also get two 200 gig InfiniBand network connections on the VM. And your Azure network connectivity for that VM is 40 gigabits per second.
Yes.
It's huge.
It's
Like, this
huge.
is a beast.
I'm trying to find the 390 because it's the true output of the GPU, and I'm trying to see if we can get some of those numbers just to comparison, because I found some numbers over here, but I don't want to say that I'm wrong or not. But you mentioned that we have 600 gigahertz, correct? Uh,
600 gigabits between each of the GPUs. So with the VM sizing, you get 8 of the GPUs, and there's 600 gigabits between the GPUs for connectivity.
yes, it doesn't say over here, so they saying that this can do some of a few gigabits of this case gigaflops. um this 32-bit machine, 24 gig in this case, graphic cards that I have one. I was the lucky one to have on my simulator, which is amazing, I have to say. Graphics on that is absolutely stunning. A 24 gig that they have. This guy, in this case, we have 164 only. Yes, and it's like we have a pool of 164 VMs to doing this, which every 8 GPU feature, they have this functionality. I saw another day because these new graphic cards that I'm talking about, you can use I think it's the NVIDIA link that they are talking about over here, that you can
Yeah.
put two together to have 48 gigs of memory. In this case, is GDR6 or whatever it is. That this 390 RTX 390, that is the consumer one. These ones
Mhm.
are the professional ones in this case.
That's right.
Uh,
And that is important to note though too,
yeah,
right? Because in these virtual machines, you are responsible for adding additional software. So if you want to add any additional software, you have to add that. It does not come with any special packs or anything. It's a kind of a straight VM. It just has the hardware access and the drivers
yeah,
provisioned for that. If you want to add special NVIDIA software, that's your responsibility and considered part of the end user.
yes. So
Yeah.
in this case, we're talking about 164 VMs, right?
Hmm.
But we're talking about something that each VM, it's 96 cores, okay, and
Yep.
8 times 40 gigs of these NVIDIA Masters. So you do the math, because it's
320, I think, right? 320 gigs of GPU RAM.
yeah, of 160, no, 380 per VM
Yeah,
times
per VM,
times
per VM.
164, right? So in this case, going quickly to my if so in this case, what we're talking about is simple simple math is 52,480 gigs of graphics GPU. Uh,
That's
just
mind-boggling.
just uh, yeah, I think it can run Tetris kind of fast.
It's funny because it's all I know how to play.
so
That and Diablo.
so yeah, and Doom, the 3D one. Remember that one? Oh my
Yep, I
god!
do. I was looking at there was a modern version of Wolfenstein that was out,
Yeah,
and one of my kids was trying to get me interested in that, and I was
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. But it's time to move on. This is to announce this beast. One of the things that it doesn't say over here, as you can imagine, is the price. I think this is not for everyone. This is
I'm going to say that's out of scope for our conversation.
exactly. Let's
We're here to celebrate the technology. Um, I
yes,
don't. We've already begged for everybody's debit card number, I think, once.
yes, we are not doing that, and we are not doing a GoFundMe just to test this. No,
Oh,
uh,
that's a great idea. I hadn't
you
thought of
have
that before.
you are guys are okay. So let's move on to the next one because it's a little bit more into our world that is updates. And let's move on. So the next one is the Azure Site Recovery Update Rollup 55 is now in general availability. This is related to
Hmm.
the April release, okay? And this is what, in this case, on Azure Site Recovery, they release on update 55, rollup update 55. Before we going on this, you just need to remember that you need to update these, and every time we're talking about these at least once per month, um, we have to say that you should start with your provisioning server, in this case
Yeah,
um, with your Azure, and then going to the provision server, and the last but not least should be the agents. Okay.
yeah. It's top down for updates, always from the portal
Yes,
downwards.
absolutely. But in this case, what they did regarding this is on the mobility service, it was huge. In this case, the added support for Ubuntu 20.04 on the master target server. So now they also add support for Linux OS on the master target. So which is huge.
And not just Linux, I want to
Yeah,
say it's Oracle Linux as
yeah.
well. So, yeah, little heads up on that one because now we're starting to talk about those very beefy database servers.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the part that is really critical to doing that. And is doing that on all of that. So if you are in this case downloading new the OVF for VMware or to physical, you already have all of this roll up inside. But Azure Site Recovery Unify setup and configuration server template. So now it's you're going to see an update on the flow when the screen usually freezes on the configuration. So they basically address that. And the last but not least, um, the portal, the recovery portal, supports now the cross-continental disaster recovery for Azure VMs. It's
Yep.
although it's limited to 3 region pairs, which is awesome because
That's a pretty good limitation, to be honest, right?
yeah, this is not this. So I think it's worth coming back for that 3 region pairs. It's like not this is not in preview. This is already available. So what we are saying over here is we are enabling you recover the VM, okay, in through 3 different Azure pairs, okay. So 3 different regions, correct? So
That's
you are
correct.
protecting that VM that is on region A to a different region and going to even a different region that you can recover that VM.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we talked about this feature, I want to say a couple weeks ago. It seems like it's recent in my memory,
Yeah.
so it's probably pretty soon. But it's really important though, because this gives us geographical redundancy within ASR.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of the original concepts for ASR, as you know, it kind of became a rapid migration tool and a rapid Azure adoption tool, which it's very strong at doing that, certainly right now. But its original usage was for site recovery,
Yes.
right? So it was used as a disaster recovery tool. And this is kind of speaking to that a little bit, right? So I think that it still does a very good job. A lot of organizations still have ASR deployed as a DR tool, even within their Azure, like their primary Azure prod subscription. And they have ASR deployed on multiple machines that are critical so they can replicate them to another region for that example. But now they can add multiple region pairs within each replication. So it's actually really fun. I was playing with this last week a little bit because I was actually working with a client that is preparing to do a migration to Azure using ASR.
Yeah. No, it's awesome because this allows you, for example, depending on your environment, right? Allows you, as we I think we spoke on this show already when this was in preview, and now it now becomes a GA that allows you
Yeah.
to have, for example, if you are out of the east, for example, allows you to have this replicated to, for example, north or even to east 2 or east the new region east 3.
Hmm.
So your focus is on the east, and then you can replicate this to east 2 and replicate even to east 3, or going, for example, on east 2 and then Europe or any other place that you can recover if you have this. If you are global dispersed, for example, you can come from the North America, any region, to Europe, and then you're going, for example, to Oceania, or in this case, or to Australia, or something like that. If you have that requirement, but at least you need a big comet coming, like what happened with dinosaurs, right? To just be
Hmm.
able to not recover. But at that time, I think no one will be here to see it. so you will be safe. At least your information is safe, right?
Well, that got serious in a hurry,
Oh,
didn't it?
come on, we
Well,
have
okay
to
then.
have a little bit of fun, but yeah.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were calling me a dinosaur or if we were just worried about extinction all of a sudden.
Yeah, you never know.
I, either way, geo-replication,
Yes,
very good thing.
global geo-replication, let's call it this way.
Exactly.
So
Oh gosh.
moving forward to the next one, talking about now the Azure Security Center. And this what I like about Azure Security Center, associated with the recovery, the site recovery updates as well. They always come with two posts, two updates. One is
Yep.
what they did in this case on GA on the past month, in this case May, right? And then you will have what's coming new. Okay, so right now what we're talking about is what they did become available, okay, on Azure Security Center on the past month, so on May 20,
Yes.
2021. So from all of those updates, that are quite a few, okay, the Azure Defender for DNS and Azure Defender for Resource Manager, it's released on GA, which is,
Yes.
my God,
It's
is huge.
huge. It's a big deal.
It
Yeah.
is a big deal because
And it's interesting. I was talking about this with a client last week because I did see this one come through as an update, and this is really great because we did I don't know if we talked about it, but we did see it come through as in preview, and this is to address a lot of the lateral movement within a subscription or within a tenant. And that is really huge. To bring visibility to that, and you always refer. You have taught me well, right? So you always refer to Resource Manager as Azure version 2,
yeah,
and to have Defender, or let's say a Defender service that is focused on that core fabric, is really important. This is a huge release. For such a small statement, it's a very massive thing.
it is. It is. Because now all of those DNS alerts that you're having, right? You can now respond that. You can have your Azure Defender that is nothing more than your not old, the rename it of the Azure Threat Protection, the
Yeah.
ATP, that now is Azure Defender, looking at those and reacting to those. So it's
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to have now all of that Azure machine learning, Azure AI, artificial intelligence working for you, monitoring those alerts. So who is querying, who is asking, who is doing anything on your DNS, okay, to see, to try to prevent right at the beginning, okay, any type of malicious behavior. So it's
Oh,
huge.
exactly. Right.
It's
And
huge right now.
yeah, and we get that crowdsourcing that you get with Azure AI, right?
Yeah.
So in the Defender suites, if another tenant, like halfway across the world, let's say, has a DNS attack happen, and that kind of outcome from that is used by the machine learning and put into the artificial intelligence for Defender, and will automatically protect other people using Azure Defender for DNS in this case from that same threat,
Yeah.
right? Or that same threat vector at least.
Yes.
So we get the benefit of the cumulative knowledge of the AI for Azure that's worldwide. And I mean, that's pretty freaking big. I'm just
It
going to
is.
say it
It
that way.
is. The other one that is pretty big is related to Azure Defender as well, but it's for the open source relational database release that is in
Mhm.
GA. So now you can use exactly the same service that we have, for example, for DNS and for the Azure Resource Manager for your database. so you can connect. And this is pretty cool because if you have, for example, Azure SQL, okay, that is a PaaS service, it's your connection stream is through a DNS, in this case connection, right? So it's everything related. So now you can see that you can even going further on your protection to going on that specific analysis of the SQL logs natively on Azure native SQL servers, extending the same protection to your SQL server that they are in hybrids, even on multi-cloud and on-premise environments. So it's really huge. But it doesn't stay on SQL only. It goes beyond that. And now you can add this to the Azure database for MySQL, Postgres,
Mhm.
and MariaDB as a single servers. So it's not only for the SQL server that we know from Microsoft, it's for the open source as well. It's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And don't forget, there is an entry there for the SQL data classification
Yes.
recommendation severity has been changed as well. So when there is a recommendation on sensitive data in your SQL database, that's been changed from high to low severity.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That part, it's huge. It's huge as well. To just going on that, even if the other part that I like as well on this new update is the part of the asset inventory. Now you can get the cloud environment filter. So basically
Yes.
what you're doing is, because Defender, as I mentioned, for example, for SQL, you can have multi-cloud. So now you can monitoring this not only on Azure, but for example, all of the service that you have on AWS or even on a GCP, on the Google Cloud
Yeah.
Platform. So it's pretty cool now to see what is the inventory that you are, in this case, monitoring, and from which cloud environment that you are just selecting the filtering of going there on the value and select either Azure, either AWS or GCP. Pretty cool.
Absolutely, right? And I just found actually one very cool tie-in to one of the things we talked about last week, which was the hardening of the Kubernetes clusters.
Yes.
Now, although this specific kind of recommendations are in preview for the Kubernetes clusters, that's now tied in to Azure Defender as well. So it's, I really love when we get to see those kinds of connections because we can see how that service fabric really does kind of come across everything, right? And that
Absolutely.
also at the same time emphasizes the importance of using Azure Defender for the resource manager because that reaches across everything, that service fabric, that we should have protection at that layer as well.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. And that is an excellent segue to the next one. That is the Azure Security Center public preview updates for May 2021. So with this case, we have only two. One of them you already mentioned, that is the hardening of the Kubernetes cluster that is in preview.
Ah,
And the
nice.
other one is the enable the trust launch applications or capabilities, sorry, that we have regarding the Azure Defender, not the Azure Security Center, sorry, for Generation 2 VMs. So this,
It is.
it is big as well,
Yeah,
to see
it
to see
is a big
this.
one.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I didn't actually mean to jump ahead. Believe it or not, that is cross-linked in the same knowledge base article.
yeah, I know.
Um, yeah.
That's why I use
So
I used that, and I was hoping that you follow that as the last one, so we can have the perfect segue. Uh,
well, it worked out well, but
Folks,
yeah, I
this
didn't
is
mean to
not
steal
trained.
50% of this one.
Exactly. I have to say that this is not trained. Okay, this is just magic happened between of us. Okay.
It is. It's unrehearsed and it's very honest, isn't it?
But yeah, so this enable trust, and we're going to talk about earning Kubernetes in a moment, because I was reading while we were waiting for each other. I was reading about this, and this Azure offers trust launch of seamless way to improve the security of generation 2 VMs. The
Yes.
trusted launch protects against advanced and persistent attacks techniques. So right now we have recommendations to enable that trust capabilities in this in preview for our generation 2 VMs. So if you don't see this, it might happen for two reasons. First of all, it's in preview.
Hmm.
Second is because you don't have a generation 2 VM.
And that's a big one.
It
That
is.
happens a lot more often
It
than
is.
I would have ever thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why, if you look at, is to be able to enable these strong trust launches of this capability, you need to be on generation 2, because on generation 2 VM we have to remember that Azure, it's based on Hyper-V. And now I'm going back to my old school. That is, you have what's called the virtual TPM, and you have
Yeah.
all of that you need. That is one of the things that Hyper-V was at that time was leading in this case on security. What's called this virtual TPM, basically what it does is enable what is the guest attestation extension. So meaning
Yes.
that if you are not, you can have that virtual machine running only on the hosts that you want. So if someone try to copy, for example, the VHD or the VHDX and extract that and try to run on their Hyper-V, that virtual machine, it will not start. So it's
Yeah.
critical, for example, when you have someone that access the storage of your Hyper-V cluster, for example, and steals, for example, and was one of the examples that I was doing the demos at that time. When we had um, presential, in this case, conference and speaking at that time, right now, that I was showing that, because usually one of the attacks that they do is they copy the domain controller, right? And
Yep. You
offline,
betcha.
they try to do the brute force attack without alerting anyone, to try to see what are the passwords, especially for those service accounts. Um,
Yeah. And a common attack vector was if somebody could obtain your backup copies while they were in transit.
exactly.
Yeah.
And by doing this guest attestation, you cannot do that, because you are only saying that that virtual machine only runs on those very specific servers because of this virtual TPM, right? So it
Yeah.
was more like, it was not encrypted, it's just using that to just make sure that that is the correct host that you can run that VM.
Exactly.
And because of that, it's one of the reasons that you have these enable trusted launch capabilities. It's on base of the virtual TPM, and that is only available on generation 2. So I know that I went a little bit more technical, but I had to say it because it reminds me my old back days, all
I
back
think
days
it's
of that.
good, right? Because you have a lot of passion
Yes.
around virtualization, right? And when we think about Azure virtualization, we're really talking about Hyper-V. And you have shared. I just maybe a little thank you moment here because I think it's fitting. So you have shared that passion with a lot of people. I can think of 3 other people I know that you've interacted with, sometimes with me, sometimes without. But I've witnessed other people get excited about your passion and because of your passion. So I think it's important that we just stop and say thank you, Marcos, for
Very
sharing your
welcome.
passion. Because it gets some of us really excited about different pieces of technology, and it gets our brain working in different ways that helps us to think up new ways to use these Microsoft solutions to help our organizations, help our users, right? So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of it, and really, it's no more complicated. I know if I'm thinking in right now of a young man, and I think he has a very similar name to yours, first name at least. And yeah, see, you're remembering, right? And a really sharp young fella, and very passionate about virtualization and other technologies as well. So yeah, you've really lit a lot of flames over the years, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you for
That
that.
said, that said, your guest attestation extension has some flexibility for the VTPM, right?
Yes.
So we can use it with Windows and Linux virtual machines in the V2, but it's also available for both Windows and Linux for scale sets, VMs and scale sets as well, right?
Absolutely. You need to be on this generation 2 in this case. Other than that, it's going to be difficult for you to have it is available, and that's the part that is really complicated. But yeah, you can now it's been expanded because Hyper-V and even Azure. It's not only for Windows. It's for basically use for everything. They've been going on that part a lot on
For a very long
for a
time
very
now.
long
Yeah,
time.
many.
Yes, for a very long time.
Yeah, it's really good. So we should maybe emphasize that this feature is also in preview
Preview.
right
Yeah.
now. So because it is part of the boot process and we add extensions to the VM in Azure, you might want to use some caution and maybe not use this one in production. I don't think we'll be too preachy about this one. It has been out for a little while with the attestation, but just a note of caution, maybe don't try it on your DC.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. But talking about now about Kubernetes and what I like about these new recommendations of hardening is usually, and I see that a lot, especially when you are doing CI/CD and you have all of that. Is for example using the default namespace for the Kubernetes cluster, right? So, and one of the recommendations of hardening is that the Kubernetes cluster should not use the default namespace. Usually,
For obvious
it's
reasons,
obvious
it's the
obvious
default.
reasons, right? But it's obvious, but a lot of people doing that, and because we know this, we've been on this kind of environment, not environment, but on this career for a long period of time. And we know that usually, oh, but it's only in test. No, it doesn't matter because we know that the test
Oh, as soon
becomes,
as you put it out,
yes,
yeah.
we know that the test becomes production on a very short period of time. So please, folks, please, our friends, do not use the default namespace. Now you will have some alerts. Now you will see, in this case, the Azure Security Center coming with that alert that you should change the default namespace, which is
Yeah,
not
that's right.
available at that time. And the other ones is that is important, is the you should disable the auto mounting of the API credentials.
Yes.
Come on, if you want not anyone to compromise your pod from running API, disable the auto mounting because
Yep.
that is a recipe for disaster.
It is, but this is really, let's think about what this is similar to for a moment, right? So this is quite similar to a hardening process that we would go through with a Windows or a Linux
Yes.
server, where we would have a checklist. And we measure that checklist against the config, of course, so that we can then say, okay, we've made it through this. We consider this approved for production, or it's okay to use this. Now you can move forward. That hasn't really been a strong emphasis. It's been coming in like little slices for Kubernetes, right?
Yes.
There's been some measurement. I want to say that there has been some, but it's been kind of the big stuff. So now we're getting into some of the more detail focused pieces, best practices with Kubernetes. And that, like you said, I think it's important to emphasize, it's going to show in Security Center now so that you can gain visibility to it. So if you're in development or you're hands-on with Kubernetes in ops, then your security team is going to know in a couple of weeks, because right now this is in preview again, but when it hits GA, it will be in the production tenants. So now is a good time to get in front of it if you're hearing this message, and start your project, start your sprint, whatever system you're using internally, and say, hey, you know what? I read this about Azure. I heard it from Marcos and Andrew. They said, yep, right hand up, left hand up, which I can't, the screen makes me forget which one is which is right hand up. Oh boy, right hand up. It's been a long day, folks. It's okay.
But it's not only that. What I like about this and what I love about the Azure Security Center is you don't need to be an expert in this case, or advanced knowledge, or an SME, let's call it this way, right? On Kubernetes to have all of this, because yes, we know this because we have experience on the field. We've been passing to this, and we have a bunch of knowledge of deploying a gazillions of Kubernetes cluster with different customers with a lot of times, right? And we come to all of these best practices. What I like about these updates and Special Security Center is they are making this without any efforts, okay, to make all of those deployments of Kubernetes way more secure for everyone. You don't need to be an expert. You just go in there, add the Kubernetes to your infrastructure, right? Add Kubernetes to your Azure Security Center, and bang, you have already that available to you to say, hey, Mr. Customer, you already are running Kubernetes. For example, you are running with the default namespace. You should not do that, okay? And get an alert. Of course that you can go there and dismiss this recommendation, because again, it's just a recommendation, but this recommendation follows the best practice of security. And if you look, there is a well public in this case document in this case that says about the container security inside of Security Center. So you will see all of the best practice that me or any other architect, in this case you as well, follow, because that is our Bible. This is what we follow. Those are guidelines. Again, are guidelines. It's not rules. It's not mandatory that you need to do it. You will increase your security, of course. You will increase your availability, and you are reducing, in this case, any type of attack. I think it's important to reinforce this, because we are not saying, and I want to be very clear to everyone that listens, that we are not saying that you should um, uh, change, in this case, the default namespace. If you have a strong reason for using that, use it. There is no problem, right? Um, but it's not becoming, your cluster becomes way more slower, or you will have problems. No, it's just because it's the default namespace. It's a well-known, okay, and it's like one of the best practice. For example, just to finish this part and not extending too much, is one of the best practices to rename the administrator user. Everyone knows that when you're building Active Directory from scratch, the administrator is there, and the user calls administrator. So there is a lot of even on the CIS, if you're going on the CIS, one of the first things, if I'm not mistaken, is to disable the administrator and copy, or in this case, recreate with exactly the same group membership another user that you define that is not the default one.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
it's
and
it's common sense. It's like, are you obliged to just disable the administrator user or user administrator? No, you are not. Are you reducing your surface of attack? Absolutely.
yep, quite a bit.
Yeah. So this is the part that I just want to reinforce, because it's really important to do it. And I've been extending this too much. That's the problem with fewer updates. We're trying to go deep. We're trying to have this conversation because we have a time. We're doing exactly the same thing as we have like 15 or 20 updates, because the conversation is so good, right?
Well, sometimes we get a little excited about stuff. I do it, you do it. Once in a while, we both do it, and then we have a very long podcast.
Yes. With
But that's okay. It's good to deep dive. That's why we use those really cool chapters too, right? So at the tail end of our long discussion on Kubernetes security, let's say if you don't want to hear it, you should have skipped ahead using the chapters
exactly,
already.
exactly. That's why I create the chapters in this case. So should we move to the next one?
Let's hit the next one here. So we have something, of course, that we're both quite passionate about, which is good prices. No, just kidding. Well,
Lower
maybe
prices
not,
in
but
this case.
lower prices are always good. But Azure Sentinel and Azure Monitor, right? So this was really exciting to see. And quite frankly, very timely. There's been a lot of security projects happening. And a lot of customers are starting to really examine data a little bit more closely for things exactly like what we were just talking about, looking at best practices and analyzing logs using a lot of the Microsoft tool sets that we're given for free, like Security Center. It's there for free, and it tells us the best practices, right? So to do that, we do have to accumulate, let's say, some data. And in this case, we want to talk about Sentinel and monitoring, which means we're really talking about a log analytics
Yes.
workspace. And you get some cool stuff completely free of charge as well
Yes.
with the log analytics workspace when it's linked to Sentinel and monitor, right? So you get like Office 365 data, that's all free. You get some internal Azure monitoring data that is free as well, coming into a Sentinel linked workspace. And I know that there's a bunch of other ones, but I don't want to misspeak too much about free stuff
Yes.
because then people get upset.
No, it's not only that. The thing is, they are, first of all, they are moving to a higher data injection, because when we talk about Azure Sentinel and Azure Monitor, we are talking the costs basically of the log analytics workspace. So we're talking about
Yes.
the injection of data per day. Okay, that is the part. Of course, that you will have another cost of the amount of data that you will retain, but in this case, it's not covered over here. It's just the amount of data. And first of all, they are putting higher data in injection, so like 1 terabyte per day, 2 terabytes per day, and 5 terabytes per day. But even on that, I like the way that they put this update, because um, we are a very detail oriented, me and you, right? And we like those details.
Sometimes.
So sometimes, no, always. Come on. That's what we like.
Okay.
Okay. So they have an example over here. If you are
Yeah.
using 500 gigs a day, and that's your commitment to use, usually you were billing $2 per gig as a
Yeah.
pay as you go rate in this case.
Yeah, it was almost like a disincentive
Yes, use.
to go with a lower tier. You had to pre-purchase a whole bunch more data than what you would
Yes,
use to avoid that big
the big
charge.
charge. And right now they're coming from $2 to 80 cents. So
Yeah,
per
that's a
gigabyte.
big
So
reduction.
it's a
Yeah,
huge reduction. So and this was one of the reasons that the people got excited with Sentinel, but then they starting to not using because of the price. And this becomes way
yes.
more appealing starting on June 2nd, right? Or started on June 2nd, more appealing
Mhm.
for you to use this, which is great because now you have these lower costs, right? From the 500 gigabytes to 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes, 5 terabytes a day of data injection, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is about the commitment that you've made, right?
Yes.
So if you're pay as you go, this doesn't necessarily apply other than the new ingestion rate. If you're over the free threshold, then you pay 80 cents a gig over top of that now instead of the $2 per gig. That one, I believe, would still apply. But this is more about the customers who have a good understanding already of how much data per day in log size is going into the log
Yeah.
analytics workspace for ingestion.
Yeah.
But you have to try it out. The one thing I want to say is if your organization hasn't tried Sentinel and doesn't understand how much data you would be ingesting, talk to your Microsoft account executive because I know that have had a renewed push for the security workshops, and you may be able to get some funding or at least some very good advice at a minimum on how to take a look at this. I know you love how I kind of like pad it, right?
No, absolutely.
But
Because I saw that because on my pipeline now I have a bunch of those security workshops again to do it, and when I saw this, but this should be over. Why are we going back again to the security workshops? And because of the success of the first wave, we are
I think so.
on the second wave in this case of these security
Yeah, one of
workshops.
the things I'm really proud of actually is that we both over the last year have had a lot of very successful security
Yeah,
workshops with
yeah,
customers, new customers, existing customers. So that's why I'm kind of saying to people like if you haven't already got a chance to play in the Sentinel space, talk, like ask, and you never know. The one thing that a really handsome smart fellow on my computer monitor right now taught me, he's looking right at me. He said to me one day, Andrew, you will never know the answer if you don't ask.
exactly.
And you know what? In this case, ask.
Exactly.
It's
The
very good.
no,
You
it's
might love the
always
answer.
guaranteed. You might listen to yes, and that's what we want to hear in this case. But for sure, grab that. You never know. You might get Andrew or me as a person to deliver these workshops. It really depends on your
I won't.
relationship.
I won't say it in the recording, but you can ask me later. I'm not booking anything in the near future right now.
So you are not
I,
available, is what you're saying.
not in the short term, but if you're looking at long term planning, then 100% I'm available.
That's okay, my friend. That's okay. No worries. Uh, moving to the last but not least is the general availability of a key rotation and expiration policies for Azure storage. So I have to say that we misleading our viewers, or in this case you, at the beginning of the show, saying that was not a topic. But after doing this, I think we have a security week.
I would agree. Actually, it was a little bit lost on you and I,
Yes, having
maybe
too much
because
fun.
we were joking around a little bit.
Absolutely.
But that's good too, right? Because it puts a smile on our face and gets us ready to, in this case, sit down and just chat while we record. But I do like the security theme this week. There's been some very positive releases, and certainly key rotation with expiration policies on storage is big. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it maybe a couple weeks ago again that we talked about storage scoping
Yeah,
keys?
it was.
Yeah, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. That might have been a bit longer, but this one's really cool. So this feature allows not just to set the key expiration duration, but also add a policy that mandates anyone deploying storage endpoints that they have to specify a key rotation duration. So it means it has to expire. Think of it like an expiring password. Once in a while, you have to reset your password. It's kind of the same idea,
Absolutely.
that there's a time limit on it. And that's really, really cool, to be honest, because one of the things that is dangerous in governance is that what did I do?
No, keep going. I'm liking. I'm liking what you're saying. Keep going.
So yeah, because when I think about governance and keys that don't expire, the way that we got around this previously was using Azure policy to take a look at how old the key was, and then make a determination if we had to expire that or raise an alert of whatever the action that we need to take is, right? But now we can rotate the keys, and we can set a policy within the storage. So it's not even in Azure policy, it's inside the storage account itself. So to me, that's kind of exciting, because it means we're going to be a lot safer when it comes to issuing keys within storage.
Yeah. And for me, you just mentioned very light the point that I was when I was smiling to see where you're going is the part of the governance, right? Because if you have a possibility of applying policies, right? Now you're very tied to Azure policy. And this
Yeah.
will solve another issue that, for example, on your dev environment, right? That you are, if you're having CI/CD that you are developing, usually you don't want to work with these key rotations. Usually set and forget. And as we know, a lot of those times that same code it promotes to UAT, right? And promotes to production. So using that, you set and forget. And a lot of those times you are using so much, or you are even getting those keys. And because they are keys, you set and forget and you never rotate those. So now, even if you are doing on the same one, I can arrange a policy, or I can create a policy that is defined for production, that no matter what you are doing, okay, I will rotate and I will have an expiration. So the application in this case needs to be aware of that to rekey all of those Azure storage keys, right? So you can be able to do it. And it does more, because if you're doing this, right, if you're doing these rekeys, you are almost obliged to using one of our favorite, in this case, features, that is Azure Key Vault. And we
Yes.
already talked about it quite a few episodes ago, that Azure Key Vault, you have the possibility of getting the key only once. You can update as many times as you want, and you get only that and starting to using. So if you are a developer and you are listening to us, this is really key for you to just update your code. So starting to use Azure Key Vault to get the keys for Azure storage, because guess what? The security team and the infrastructure team will deploy this policy in production. So we will stop
Yep.
of putting there and forget it, because now it becomes under the Azure governance. It becomes one
Mm.
topic because it's GA that we have to talk about it with our customers to say, what is your policy regarding the key rotation and expiration of the keys for the Azure storage? So that's the part that I
Mhm.
was smiling because I was thinking that you are going on that direction, but you just brief light touch that part. But that's okay.
I did.
That's okay.
I can't take it all. I can't take it all.
That's okay. That's why I was smiling because I was saying, "Wow, he's getting on that direction." But yes, you are right. You are absolutely right on this. But I think this, in my perspective, goes way a little bit further that only this particular feature, right?
Yeah. So it is definitely a deep
Yes.
topic. And when we think about security, which is definitely the theme for the week, yeah, we totally lied at the start. That's okay. If you didn't like the lie and you're happy about the security, let us know in the comments if you've made it
Just
this far.
smash the unlike button, and we are okay with that.
It's honest and that's fine with us. But it is important though for all of our customers and also all of our listeners as well that we don't light touch on security. So it is one of those things that's easy to do the
Yes.
minimum, but it is a lot of work. You do have to be thoughtful and mindful when you sit down and you start working through all of these things, right? And thinking about policy and governance and best practices. So use the tools, use Azure Security Center. It's really there to help you. It's there to help guide you and your organization and make your journey a little bit easier and to help you focus on some of the one of the things I love about, I want to digress for a moment. One of the things I love about Secure Score in general is that it kind of bumps up to the top the most impactful actions that you can take to help improve your score. And the same is very much true with Azure Security Center, that the recommendations they make, they try to put a good order to them, and the most meaningful, the most impactful ones are at the
And
top.
critical as well.
And yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right? Because if there's, for example, like a critical vulnerability that has been noticed by the AI with Azure Defender, and then it moves that up to the top of your list if there is opportunity to improve and reduce your risk footprint.
Yes.
So it's there to help you, help guide you. But yeah, there is a lot of very deep dive security stuff. That's for darn sure.
Absolutely.
It's a very deep topic,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
what a great week.
A great week. A great week. We ended this on the very high note. We end this episode on a very high note. So yes, we come to the end of this today or this week show. Sadly, the conversation was amazing. I was hoping for a shorter episode. I have to say, I have to confess. But you never know. Between me and Andrew, we starting to say, "Do you have 2 minutes?" And it already happened 2 hours later. We say it was only 2 minutes, and we already 2 hours talking. So, but
That's the IT 5 minute problem,
exactly,
isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Andrew, for once again being here and having this conversation because this is a dialogue. If it was a monologue, you will only see my face, not the beautiful face of Andrew Lowes. Um, and again, thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to smash that like button. Give some comments to see what you like, you don't like. We apologize for the misleading in the beginning. If you think that that is unacceptable, just smash with really hard the unlike button. Um,
Absolutely. Leave a
Leave a
comment.
comment.
Let us
Exactly.
know. Yep.
But if you think that this is useful for some of your colleagues, share it, or we will give you the money back without any problem.
The money back
The money back
guarantee.
guarantee
It's, yeah,
joke.
we're in trouble,
Exactly.
everybody. We're in trouble.
Exactly. So
Yeah, thank you so much for staying with us. Again, we really value all of the feedback. It's absolutely amazing.
absolutely. So thank you and see you next week. Bye.